The competencies are divided into three domains: knowledge, practice, and self-awareness. And here's the way I see these. Okay, I see these areas, these domains, in the light of multiculturalism, multicultural research that began, decades ago, 4 decades ago. There was an evolution, um, as I understand it, in the development of research into cross-cultural, multicultural counseling that started when an organization in the Northwest a long time ago began looking at attrition rates, for so-called minority people who were coming in to see therapists for couples counseling and individual counseling. And people were not coming back to treatment. They were leaving after one or two sessions or three at the most, and that was a problem they wanted to look at. So the result of that research was development of an interest in the area of knowledge. People began asking, what do we need to know about other people in order to be able to practice effectively across cultures? So for about 10 years, there were a lot of publications about knowledge, about the most important thing to be able to be an effective multicultural, cross-cultural counselor and deal with these issues we're talking about is to know who your people are. Know what it's like to be Asian American, know what it's like to be African American, know who Native Americans are, and learn about their between group and the within group differences. I learned that in the hard school of Knox when I was in practice in Native communities. But knowledge, about communities was seen to be very important. After a while, that gave way to technique. So there was a period of time where there were a lot of articles published, and even in textbooks, you still see that, certain sections in introductory textbooks, how to counsel African Americans, how to counsel Native Americans, how to counsel Asian Americans, how to counsel Hispanic Americans, how to counsel men, how to counsel women. There was all these articles and books on how to, how to do it. So technique was seen as important. And then finally, after a while, people began to look at the variable of counselor self-awareness. So what folks began to discover is that, yes, knowledge was important and practice was important, technique was important. But when they looked at counselor self-awareness, when they looked at the counselor's degree of comfort in his or her own cultural skin, that turned out to be one of the strongest predictors of outcome, positive outcome, when practicing cross-cultural, multicultural counseling. So the reason why I stress the spiritual autobiography is because of this. The degree to which we know who we are, and the degree to which we are comfortable in our own cultural skin, and that may include religion and spirituality, that may help predict successful outcomes in the work that we do when we're doing cross-cultural work or multicultural counseling. I learned this experientially early in my career working in Native communities. I read a book by a guy named Hammerschlag. He was a psychiatrist. The name of the book is called The Dancing Healers. I highly recommend it. It's a wonderful book that's been around for a long time now. And Hammerschlag was a psychiatrist who was trained in New York, I believe, if I remember correctly. And he wanted to go out west and work with the Indians, work with the Native Americans for his, might have been his internship. I'm not sure now. But when he got out there, Dancing Healers, that's right. Yes, he was met with a lot of hostility that he didn't expect. He expected to be greeted as the great white doctor from the East. And he was on one of the Pueblo communities. I don't know if it was Hopi or where it was, but at any rate, he was perplexed. And he talks about in the book critical experiences, encounters that he had with Native people in his work there that were significant for him. One of those was encountering a medicine man who was in the hospital, and I believe it was Gallup, New Mexico. I visited that place. and Hammerschlag went into the room, introduced himself as a doctor and a medicine person, said, "Doctor of what?" "Doctor of the mind." "Doctor of the mind." He laughed and he said, "Oh, if you're a doctor of the mind, you have to know how to dance. And to be able to dance, you have to know your inner song." So that was another significant encounter. But the most significant encounter, the most significant critical experience he had was when he was first invited to a sweat lodge ceremony for the first time. And that was a privilege, if you're not native. And so he went into the lodge. The lodge is, it's a dome-shaped structure, very low to the ground. It's very dark inside. In the middle, there's a pit where these hot glowing rocks are held in this pit. Water is poured onto the rocks and steam comes up, and the steam causes you to sweat. So it's a physical cleansing. And it's also believed that if you inhale the steam and exhale, it's also a spiritual cleansing. And in this practice, the leader will invite people to go around a circle, around the rocks, and chant or pray or do whatever, they want to express. Usually it's prayers. In my experience, it was prayers. And when Hammerschlag was in there for the first time, at some point in the middle of the ceremony, as I recall, someone across the rock pit, the fire pit, began chanting in Yiddish. And when he heard Yiddish in the sweat ceremony, he broke down and had what sounded like what I would call some kind of a conversion experience, because what happened to him in the sweat lodge when he heard Yiddish was he identified his cultural background as a Jewish person with the history of genocide. He identified that with the genocide of the native people that he was working with. And he made a deeper connection. And when he went home, he began over a period of time to reincorporate things from his Jewish background into his life. Take what you can and leave the rest. That's what it sounded like he did. He made it his own. And when he did that, things improved in his work and in his relationships with the tribal members, with the community. So the message I got from that was that the more comfortable I am in my own cultural skin and know who I am, the more I do that self-reflective work, which is our greatest tool as counselors, the more likely I am to be able to be comfortable and succeed. And I spent 20 years, in that work. That wasn't normal. Usually that didn't happen with non-native providers. But I also learned about myself. It was the period of time where I call it my cultural archaeological healing. I dug into my ancestry. I got to know my grandparents better than I knew them when they were alive. I found out why, as much as I could, they came here. And I went home more often in a more comfortable way. It was a deeper healing for me, for which I'm grateful. And it really helped me to do the work that I did. It helped me to stay there. And people noticed that. My friends, the people who became my friends, the tribal members, the anger sort of slipped away. The "what are you doing here" anger slipped away, and I was more welcomed into the community. So this business of counselor self-awareness and your spiritual autobiography is very important.